All right, it says recording Shtajio, and I'm gonna assume that it's got the videos working the way it's supposed to. So hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Shtajio's vlog. I'm Henry Thurlow, and
I'm Stephen Murphy.
all right, hi Stephen. So it's been a while since the last episode, and I wanted to have Arthel on. I had a topic for a while now, but we're all crazy busy at the studio, so just kept pushing it back, like, I can't make it this week, we'll do it next week, we'll do it Friday, we'll do it the following Monday. And then it just kept going and going and going and going. So I figured, you know what, let's have Stephen on instead. So I know that Stephen is no replacement for Arthel Isom, but
Yeah, and I have absolutely nothing to do either. I'm completely like just sitting
you
here
know, you
twiddling my
don't always
thumbs.
get what you want out of life, you know?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you got to suck it up, and sometimes you got to look at Steven instead of Arthel.
Hey, I'll take the compliments where I can get them, no matter how backhanded.
No witty comebacks for that, Steven.
That was it. That was the witty comeback.
Thank you. Excellent, sir. No, but thank you. Thanks for being here. And so here is the topic we're going to do this time.
Yeah.
It was a timely topic. Like, it was super topical when I wanted to do it, like 3-4 weeks ago now, or maybe it's even longer than that at this point. But it's when source material is adapted, does it have to be adapted the exact same way that, does it have to be faithful to the source material? Adaptations, right? So the reason that this totally came up actually was, okay, first and foremost, and Stephen, you're going to be terrible at this, but no big spoilers. You can act, I know you hate this, but don't ruin anything for anyone. Although in fairness,
You know what the funny thing is? I'm seeing this a lot with a lot of vloggers, YouTubers, influencers.
Yeah.
They always say like spoilers, but screw it. Like, we're gonna spoil it. So if you keep listening, it's your fault kind of situation. Because the problem
But the
is
thing
now
is, we don't
you
know
can't.
what we don't know what we're, well, at very least give people massive warning. And to the extent you
Yeah.
can here, I'll go first so you see what I'm saying.
Like, for example, I could say like, oh, I just watched the Eternals trailer and I like that this character was in it and stuff like that. People would be like, spoilers, but it's like, it's a trailer.
I guess,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So
no,
it's,
that, that to me totally wouldn't count. So I guess,
yeah.
I'm not trying to protect the ultra sensitive people. I'm just saying, like, if
Yeah.
you're like, well, in the book, The Sixth Sense, the ending was totally different than the boom ending,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? And then just saying what it is. So here, I'll go first to show you what I mean. So the reason this topic came up was The Promised Neverland was an anime that was adapted from a Shonen Jump manga, right? It was like super popular. It was about a bunch of kids that escaped from like this foster home after they found out that the foster home was like giving them up to like demons on the outside, and like what was the outside world. Yeah, that was the whole plot, like from episode 1, right? Like they find out demons are outside of this thing, and then, oh no, they have to escape, and et cetera, et cetera. So the whole first season is about them trying to get out of that situation, and it became really famous, right? Because it was a really well done season. And then the second season aired, and even right from the beginning, I saw critiques online saying, "Oh, they're skipping around the source material, what they're showing. This pacing is totally different." And then all of a sudden it totally ended at the end, right? And it didn't seem like it was leading to that. It seemed like it was leading to another to be continued season, because it wasn't trying to reach like this big giant climax. It was just heading kind of naturally, and then boom, all of a sudden at the end it hits you with a ton of information, right? So I think that's spoiler free. I wasn't specific, I was very vague, right? And then I saw online people are saying, oh my god, this is totally different than the manga, like it kind of reached the same conclusion, but it didn't show you all the important parts and all of this stuff. Now, I actually never read the manga, so I'm an anime only person. So theoretically, hypothetically, I should be the most confused out of anyone, right? Because it didn't adapt the material properly, right? And so like I would be totally lost. The thing is, and that happens sometimes. That happened with Tokyo Ghoul, which I was a big you know, I worked on Tokyo Ghoul a lot. I love Tokyo Ghoul, but it is true, like the source material got really rushed through towards the end, and they changed some things. And Tokyo Ghoul actually had a whole bunch of changes even along the way. The ending of season 1 was totally different than what the source material is. I understand where fans are coming from when they say such and such didn't adapt the source material well, and so that's a great example of you should have properly, you know, adapted the source material. The source material had all this great pacing, all these great character arcs, and concluded in a great way. Why didn't you do it that way, right? But I think that they're leaving out two other big possibilities, right? Because sometimes that is the case for me, right? Like it is possible that something just wasn't adapted well, right? And they should have adapted it better. But the other two things it could be is, number one, it is possible that mediocre source material can be adapted in even more amazing ways if an interesting director or writer gets a hold of it and actually improves upon the stuff. And if that's the case, and the new thing is way more interesting than the very simplistic bare bones original, then I'm all for it. Like I actually like and here's where some fans will hate me for this, but I actually like that Dragon Ball Z was way more episodes than it even needed to be from the manga. I like that they kept showing where other additional characters were, and they extended on fight sequences so that it wasn't one chapter long or one episode long, but it was 5 episodes long because they added new choreography and new aspects to it, right? And the music and everything. I like that they do that for One Piece too, and I know a bunch of One Piece fans will kill me. Oh my god, I can't believe, like, I thought that it should be adapted page by page. But the thing is, if it's adapted page by page, it's just going super fast. I like that you change some things and you give me more information, and it's more of a fulfilling experience at the end of it. And the last thing that people don't take into account, and then I'll kick it over to you, Stephen, is just like, is the behind the scenes kind of problems that happen during productions. You know, I think when people see source material isn't being adapted perfectly, they immediately think, oh, well, the director or the studio or somebody dropped the ball really bad. Well, it's possible, and I'll go more into this. I don't want to keep ranting. I do want to kick it over to you, but it is possible that what you're seeing might be way better than it even should have been. Like the director or the studio is handed conditions that could have resulted in absolute catastrophe and the worst thing you've ever seen, but they somehow raised those terrible conditions into a deliverable, enjoyable product, right? It might not hold up quite as well as the original, but to be honest, the staff really did knock it out of the park, although you might not realize it because you are comparing it against things you shouldn't be comparing it against. Anyway, that's my rant. How do you feel about this so far?
So when you say like adapting, just to clarify, are you saying like we're adapting from like manga and books into like movies, TV shows, and video games? Is that the
So I guess that's my starting point. My starting point is like a
okay?
manga to an anime, or a book to an anime, or a movie or something. But if you have a different, I think adaptation, liberties that the new person creating the new thing in the new medium
Mhm.
should be able to have in comparison to a source material. So it could be like a comic book based on a movie. It could be a
Yeah.
movie based on a comic book, vice versa, right? Yeah,
Well, I think yeah, understand. I think when it comes to like just starting with manga to anime, I think obviously you're the scholar, you know, and I'm but the middling student that like watched it a lot in the late 90s, early aughts, and in the mid aughts started pursuing it as a career, and now here I am working in it in the medium, and I don't watch it as much. But from what I've seen from my experience, at least in Japan and the Japanese culture, they're pretty good at translating exactly what's on the manga to the big screen with some nuance changes, as you were just stating now. So I think it comes more to, I see a lot of the hoopla or negative or controversial opinions when it comes to like the West type of adaptations. And I think my opinions on that are ambivalent, I guess, right? Because usually I don't mind it as much if it's something that I'm not 100% invested in. But then, like, if it's something that I'm a fan of, like I grew up watching it, a lot of times when you see the critiques of a lot of these things, it's usually by a certain generation that grew up with it as a kid, and now are seeing like this modern day adaptation of it, and people start to critique it, and it's usually a generational thing. Whereas the younger audience, either A, it didn't hit them the right way, or B, they love it, even they love it the way they love it. So for example, you were kind of like worried that maybe this topic, it was held off, that it's not relevant, but I think it's actually very relevant,
Mhm.
even more so today, because now you have all these streaming services, and they've got to constantly put out content, and of course they've got to look back to old TV shows, old manga, old books that constantly put stuff out, put stuff out, put stuff out. So like, for example, let's use the Western model, like Mortal Kombat just came out, right? And that really got a lot of mixed reviews, because people like me grew up playing Mortal Kombat, and I know the lore like crazy. But then when you watch the movie, they introduce all these new lore ideas that are just confusing, and they don't make sense. They don't, it's like, is this for the younger audience? It doesn't seem so. It's obviously not for the older audience, because the older audience knows the lore. So that in that case, I think it's kind of baffling as to why they adapted all these new things to no one. So that's the only time I guess I have a critique on these types of things, is when you're adapting things, who are you adapting it for? Right? Are you adapting it for the people that grew up this thing, or are you trying to like open up to the newer market, whether it's another culture or the younger generation, these types of things. So that's, yeah.
I think that there's always the critique of, did someone do a good job or not? And obviously there's
Yeah.
examples of like really terrible movies and work, and examples of really good ones. I think though, as you were talking, I realized, and I'll just put it on them, I think anime fans, anime otaku, are actually unreasonably kind of bothered by this though, because other places aren't. Like, okay, so even if you get some critiques from the Mortal Kombat audience, that would be because I guess they didn't like the movie or whatever. It's not that they
Yeah.
expected a one for one every single plot line transition to the movie, right?
Yeah.
And only anime fans think that they have the right to get that, realistically, I think, because when a book is adapted into a movie, it's going to be a little different, and scenes are going to be cut and scenes reorganized, and a director's style might have it like play out in reverse, or just something totally different, right? You're going to see the adaptation of it. Comic book fans, when they go to see the live action movies, or the animated movies, or animated TV series, for that example, they don't ever expect a page for page, dialogue line for dialogue line translation of that to the new thing, right, in the movie.
Yeah.
That they're going to rework the villain of Iron Man into having them be introduced, have their origin story play out, and then have them be defeated within the 2 hours of this new movie. You don't expect, oh well, actually in the comic there was a side saga that happened with this, and they shouldn't have gone to the climax of the fight until they showed that. And like, no one thinks that. Like, you're never going to get that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's actually a good point you bring up. And the reason I'm interrupting is because it's fresh in my head right
Yeah.
now. Is I think the difference between those two is that I think anime was always more prevalent throughout. It has more of a track record of being available to people, so they were able to consume it. And I think when it comes to like these pages, these comic book pages that have been around since the '60s and stuff like that, and now just seeing the light of day, people are just, I think, more on the comic book side, more thankful that they're like, oh, I don't care, as long as we can see Galactus on the big screen. That's what I care about. Whereas anime,
even newer ones,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know if I have any grading. Well, the new Marvel I mean, Jessica Jones and those kind of characters, right? Like those Marvel series, those are newer
yeah.
characters, right? Like 2000-ish, right?
Oh no, they've been around. Jessica Jones has been around for like since the '70s, like that.
Wait a
Like
minute,
Iron Fist.
wasn't there like a new burst of characters around like the late 90s, early 2000s, something like that?
Well,
No,
I think like
Luke,
Venom. I know is a
okay,
character that was
Venom's
then
it. Wait,
Carnage,
but
stuff like that.
real quick though, like Luke
Yeah.
Cage and all of those Marvel shows have been around forever.
not forever, but I could have sworn like Luke Cage and Jessica Jones were characters that were out like in the early 80s or 70s. I could be wrong, but
Really?
I could have sworn those are much
I'll have
older
to double
characters.
check that.
Iron Fist,
I swore I was different, but I'm not an
like
expert on this.
Shang-Chi and
Let's
stuff like
go
that.
with Venom though, because that's a perfect
Yeah.
example, right?
I know
Uh,
Carnage was definitely the 90s.
yeah, and so when the movie comes out, I don't expect. I mean, when that movie was announced, it was even announced that like Spider-Man's not going to be in it, right? So how are you going to
Yeah.
have anything even remotely close to the normal Venom origin story if there's no Spider-Man, right? Like, because it was
Yeah.
all linked, right? The Spider-Man got the black suit and everything, and then it turned out to be Venom. So, like, obviously going in, I know I'm not getting it. I know they're going to use the ideas, but this is a new medium, right? And so
Yeah.
anime, I think people just got spoiled because so many series and like Toei Animation Studios
I think that's it. Yeah.
was never afraid to make 100+ episode series, you know. So like Fist of the North Star and Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon, like they're like, oh well, if if it takes 200 episodes to just go page by page in this manga, we're okay with that. And which is amazing because no other place in the world would produce something like that, but Japan did. And so, but people got
Yeah.
spoiled. Now they totally expect it, right? I guess the reason I'm
Yeah.
always more open is because I got into anime via those 80s OVAs, right? And
Sure. I think we
they
all
were
did.
like
Yeah.
they were adaptations of like Hideyuki Kikuchi books like Demon City Shinjuku or Vampire Hunter D, right? And like I wasn't even familiar with those source material at the time, but even if I was, I knew that I wasn't going to get a book exactly interpreted in a 45-minute OVA, right? So I'm okay
Yeah.
with interpretations. I mean, I guess I do understand. Like as a One Piece fan, I wouldn't want the anime coming up with like a totally original ending. Like, wait a minute, this is a totally different. Like, oh, this guy dies in the anime, but he's not dead in the manga. I get that. You don't need to go so extreme with that. Although, in fairness, like Walking Dead and Western shows do that, right? Like different
Yeah.
characters are dead in different life. But I get
Well, these are
that.
the
But it's like
Invincible as well, I think.
if things just play out a little different and like the camera
Yeah.
angles aren't used the same, or they're fighting in a slightly different location, or one scene happens faster in the anime or one scene happens slower in the anime and is more drawn out, like I guess I'm just totally okay with that. And I wanted to give some examples of where it actually did work, I think. And again, crazy anime fans might disagree with me, but like another anime that is topical with this is the Dragon Quest anime that's currently airing. There was a 90s anime based on this Dragon Quest manga, right?
Yeah.
And it caught up with the manga, I guess, in the 90s, right? And so they didn't have any more source material. So they didn't really end it. It was still left very wide open, but at least the storyline that they were in the middle of, they wrapped up. They defeated the big villain that they were fighting at the time, right? And then the series ended happy, like, all right, we beat this, and the adventure continues, right? Now they're remaking that series currently, right? Now that they finally caught up to that point, and actually that fight ends totally differently. They actually lose against that guy, and so the story arc continues, right?
Yeah.
And the fighting continues, and so that story arc is bigger than it was portrayed in the anime in the 90s, right? And they're still fighting that guy now because the plot is going off in different directions. In the 90s, though, I think it was a great idea that they altered it, right? It would have been
Yeah.
terrible that the final episode is they lose, and what's going to happen on next week's episode? Oh, guess what? There is no next week's episode. That would be terrible. So reworking it so that it was somewhat of a satisfying conclusion, and you can own the VHS or DVD box set and feel like you have something complete, is a good idea. It should be changed like that. That's correct. Now, if it got
Yeah.
renewed for another season back then, they would have had to alter the next few episodes, right? Because it wouldn't have linked up exactly with the source material. But that's okay. I think that's okay. Sometimes you have to alter stuff. It's a different medium, right? And you have to keep in mind seasons and what's getting renewed and what's not. I actually want to go back to that and rant about that for a little bit more, but I'm talking too much. Kick it back over to you.
Well, yeah, as I'm listening, like I think when it comes to adaptation, it's really a balance, right? So for example, you said like I really like that change, but then you might have a group of people say like, why did it? right? And so then so it's always tough. Like, so I'm looking from the perspective of the executive that is, funding this whole operation, right? Because they need a certain amount of numbers and subscriptions and stuff like that in order to pursue or to continue this thing. Then you have to look at the people who create this thing, right? A really good example, because I love Doom Eternal, I play it all the time, but I really love what Hugo Martin is doing. He's like the game director, and he's talking with the fans like daily about story and about gameplay mechanics and stuff like that. And so my point of that is that if you're a person that's adapting this thing, it depends on who's adapting, right? So if it's a person that really understands the fans' love of this character or these series, they can make better decisions narratively going forward when they adapt it from the pages to the cellulite and stuff like that, versus someone who maybe doesn't know the source material very well, but they're also very good at making great stories, right? So it's there's a lot of moving pieces here about it. And so when I always try to keep my own fandom in check. I think that's kind of like the underlying 800-pound gorilla in the room, is that everyone that consumes it and even makes it has to keep their sort of fandom in check a little bit and their entitlements in check a little bit, and kind of look at a bigger picture when creating these things. Because like I was listening to Howard Stern years ago, and like Seth Rogen walked in and he said like it's a miracle that a movie or a TV show ever gets made. A success and is a success, right? So like we're making miracles every day, like taking these things off the pages and then turning it into like a freaking 8-episode animated series. It's crazy. It's madness. And so yeah, I guess I just fizzled out there with what I was saying, but basically,
No,
yeah,
I get it. No,
that's
I
sort of my
totally
take on
agree
it.
with you. I totally agree with you, and I totally get like you have to keep your fandom in check, and I guess that's what I feel like anime fans in particular don't do properly. Like that's where they're maybe immature more than some other people. Because going back to the point I wanted to make with the Promised Neverland. So like I don't know the source material. Obviously, the source material, like even I am like, okay.
Wait, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
And let me just, I don't have any, this is stuff for, I didn't mean to interrupt your frame of thought, but think about this. You watch Pokemon, the very first Pokemon, Ash Ketchum and Pikachu and Brock and Misty and stuff like that. You're 15 or 16. Now you're 34 and you're going to go see like Pokemon Sun and Moon, right? And it's still Ash Ketchum as a kid, but now you're a 34-year-old man or woman. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it makes sense if like Ash Ketchum, like it was that top of Gurren Lagann, where like they start off as kids and now they're adults, like you almost like, and having kids themselves. That I think that would have been awesome if Pokemon sort of advanced where Ash Ketchum does grow up and becomes a man and has a kid or comes out of the closet. I don't know, but basically grows with you, right? And then I think it would be, I don't know, it would solve a lot of problems that maybe a lot of anime fans are having, because they don't stay kids; they're growing up too, So it'd be great if Pokemon grew with.
Well, Pokemon doesn't
the
have
fans
source material really though, because like so.
I know it's like a toy thing, yeah.
Well, yeah, and just it I get your point, but it's a little different. It's a little different.
I'm sure. I admit it's vague at best, but it's just a thought experiment. You know what I mean?
Just to jump back, so the Promised Neverland, as someone that wasn't familiar with what was going to happen, even I was like, I mean, I didn't love it. I was like, what is happening at the end here? Like, oh, they do this and then it ends. Oh, and I guess that was the ending. Well, that wasn't really a very climactic thing. But here's the thing. Here's what I want fans to understand. Like, was that the best decision at the moment though? Because what I do appreciate is that at least I feel like I finished The Promised Neverland. I watched the 2 seasons and I do feel like it's done. Now I understand that it might not have adapted the best way it could have been, but it's done. So like I didn't work on that show at all. And I don't know anyone who worked on that show personally, so I can just talk from a fan. I'm not giving insider info of the industry. This is all just conjecture, right? This is just me as a fan looking on and thinking probably what happened. I'm guessing that they started the season not knowing exactly if they were going to get future seasons, right? And they were gonna read the room and see is it still a super ultra famous popular franchise like it was and selling the way it was during season 1 times or not, right? And so the first few episodes were paced maybe a little different than season 1, but like we're kind of going normal. And I think they probably figured out, oh no, that's not true. And they behind the scenes they're talking to producers, and the producers tell them sometime around episode 3 or 4 or something, guess what? We decided no future seasons. That's it. No future seasons. And end of story. You can cry about it all you want. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be produced anymore. At that point, what's the best decision to move forward? Is the best decision to move forward just adapt the source material until wherever we can get it, and then just boom, complete and utter to be continued? By the way, we're never continuing it. Haha. Because that happens in a bunch of anime too, and it makes me angry. Shigurui is an anime that I love, and I love the manga. It's unbelievable, one of the best stories I've ever read. But honestly, it doesn't end. It's like, all right, here's the end of episode 13. Look forward to 14. Guess what? Never a 14. What the right? Like I get angry at that. And so if I was presented with that situation, I kind of don't think the choices they made for The Promised Neverland season 2 are the worst ones, which is that, you know what, it's going to be super rushed, but how about if we actually wrap up the whole thing by the end of this season so that it feels like it ended, right? And yeah, it won't play out the best, and we're not going to win any awards for the best pacing and et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? It'll be done. We'll actually finish it. We were never going to get a season 3 anyway. We confirmed that. Let's actually finish it and have the bow tied on top of this project, right? And so yeah, I think that's right. And I thought that the same thing with Tokyo Ghoul. People didn't love the finale of Tokyo Ghoul. I understand that
well, honestly, who loves the finale of anything, right? Finales are really
right?
tough to stick the landing.
Yeah,
think of all the great shows of history. It's like you cannot. They always have a disappointing series finale or ending or something like that.
Yeah,
I think it's the nature of the beast.
Even not to go off on a rant about the ending of Game of Thrones, but like even Game of Thrones, even if we're not going to talk about the ending, even when we're talking about the adapted material section, like things were playing out differently than they played out in the books. Scenes that were done in book 2 didn't show up until season 4 sometimes, as if they couldn't fit it in, but then decided maybe it was important later on, so they'll bring it back. But that's the thing, they were molding it as it went along. And again, not going into the ending, because I actually like the ending and people still just hate me for saying that, but
I don't hate you.
But I think we can all agree that like season 3, 2 and 3 and 4 were amazing, right? And yet that was not adapting it one for one. It wasn't adapting it one for one at all. And entire characters weren't being introduced, right? It was different. It was they were adapting it differently, but still adapting it really well. And I think that almost everyone accepts that, except anime fans. And I wish anime fans would just accept more that it's a different medium. Here's like maybe the last thing I'll just say about that, because I could rant forever and ever, but let's just not do that. But the last thing I'll say is most series that get signed aren't getting signed for a Toei style, oh yeah, take 200 episodes if you need. They're getting signed for 12 episodes and then that's it. Or in the case of like Western productions, not even that. It might be 4 episodes. Netflix that gives you 3, 4, 5, 6 episode season or something like that. And let's see if it becomes famous. Do you bet it all on, I'm sure I'll get the whole 100 episodes, so let's just move the story along as if we're going to get those? Or do you say, no, I'm going to realize that I'm very lucky to have my 4 episodes or 6 episodes. Let me actually try to, in case this doesn't get renewed, actually somehow try to make this a self-contained working 6 episodes. And then if it does get renewed, we can always make sequels and bring up more story points and go back to the characters, right? But like for now, should we not proceed as if we're going to guaranteed get that, because you're almost never going to get that. And just actually, and that is what I would do. And people can hate on me for that, but what I would do is I would rework things to try to have a good, complete thing when this one season is delivered, right? And yes, that might mean changing some stuff, but
well, it's one of my biggest, I hate it so much when something I love gets canceled, right? And it's not because like for example, The Expanse was a great example. Some of the best sci-fi you'll watch on TV, but it was on a network that didn't have a budget, so I think they canceled it after season 3, and people lost their shit over it. And I think it was through fan demand that Jeff Bezos came and bought the series, right? And it's on the next 2 seasons are on Amazon. So I guess my point, that little anecdote, is if anime fans are like pissed that like a thing that they love gets cut too short, it's only 2 seasons, they have to subscribe. They have to, it's all about ratings, or in this case these days, subscription. You got to subscribe to Crunchyroll and Netflix and stuff like that, because that's what they're looking at. They're just looking at the numbers. So if there's something that people love and are angry, they get canceled, but the executives and people on the other end, like, well, no one was watching it, and that's why we can't afford it. It's a big production. So yeah, I think that's a lesson for fans as well, is you gotta put your money where your mouth is and support the things that you love, because they're expensive to produce.
The Edge of
you know
Tomorrow, that was adapted from All You Need Is Kill, a manga, and it wasn't adapted
yeah
one for one, but people liked it. Also,
yeah
Old Boy, the Korean movie.
oh
I didn't
yeah
see the Spike Lee version, but the Korean movie is beloved by everyone, right?
oh, I
Um,
saw, yeah, it was great, yeah.
it was that was adapted from a Japanese manga, but it wasn't adapted one for one. It was altered.
Yeah.
There are side stories, filler, essentially not adapted material of certain series like One Piece, like movie 6. One Piece has a ton of movies, but like movie 6 was a Hosoda Mamoru movie, and uh it was like almost more of a Hosoda Mamoru movie than it was even any type of One Piece adaptation at all. But it
Yeah.
was amazing, and it turned out awesome. Using source material as a base and then making something amazing works. It's just that fans like pointing to the failures and then saying that's why you don't
Yeah.
create new things. But it works in some cases, and I wish people would just point to some of the successes a bit more, to defend making necessary alterations.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I'm more of a scholar of like the Western pop culture and stuff like that, even though I live and work in Japan. But I mean, yeah, like a lot of Philip K. Dick did to like amazing things like Total Recall, just off the top of my head. That's completely different from the source material, but of course everyone remembers that Paul Verhoeven or a Schwarzenegger flick. That's just one off the top. That Starship Troopers, which I think was Heinlein wrote that. And look how that got adapted. I mean, that's an amazing movie and stuff like that. So there's a ton of things, or remakes of older material that wasn't good, like was it the Howard was it Howard Hawks who wrote, or the Howard Hawks film, like Who Goes There, which then got remade into the 1981 John Carpenter The Thing. So if you look at the original 50s movie,
Mhm.
it's like the Thurman B horror movie. It's like not scary at all. It's kind of boring, but then they took that and they made it into like what it is today. Man, The Thing is like one of the best like sci-fi horror movies in my opinion. I love that movie. You know, so yeah, there's a ton of adaptations and remakes and reboots that are better. The Blob, like I really wish they would remake that.
They
I
will.
mean,
They guaranteed. Well, I'm surprised. They remake
the '87 flick was great, but they
especially
could,
horror
yeah,
movies.
yeah,
It's yeah, but they will. I guarantee that
yeah.
that announcement will come at some point. I feel like I had a whole bunch more examples when I came into this thing, but whatever. I think I've made my point in general. You know, Anime fans in particular
Yeah.
just need to be a little bit more open-minded and not go so
Just a
crazy.
quick question,
Yeah.
because I know you mentioned like Promised Neverland a lot. Like, was there a lot going on in your feed? Was there a lot of fan outrage that
I just
ended,
well,
or
I noticed it blew up pretty big. It was even like trending in the US. Like I saw even like
yeah,
US news stories saying like Japanese anime fans are upset at alterations to their beloved story or something like that, right? And I
yeah,
just I watched that one, so I knew what they were talking about, and I was just like, and that was the same week that the Dragon Quest episode also revealed to me that the source material was changed in the earlier one. So like a whole lot of like source material being altered, is that good or bad, was on my mind when that kind of came out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the to one thing I'll in this case I'll support the fans. I'll play devil's advocate.
Mhm.
And again, like you like the ending of Game of Thrones. I wasn't like one of those people like, F this, but I was also like, it was more comical to me because you can literally see the scenes like starting to break, as they're like wrapping up all this stuff like that. So it literally looked like the writers were like writing this up as they're like leaving, and then the kid in the wheelchair becomes goodbye, like that type of thing. So I think my point is that like if you create something that's really good, that captures the fans' imagination, like you've got them where you want them. You as a creator have to be very careful about where you take them, because if you, the creator, like the Ryan Johnson thing, like I want to subvert their expectations, I'm not against that, but why are you subverting your expectations? Are you giving them something that they're going to love in the future, or is this some like weird lesson you're trying to teach them, or is this like there's a lot of or ego, a lot of things that fail from creators' perspective. It's like an ego gets in the way of things, and like
Yeah, but you know what? And I don't think you disagree with me, but I think most people hear what you're saying, and maybe you do
yeah,
totally disagree with me, but and take that to mean, yeah, that's why you listen to the fans and give just the fans what they want. But I am always against that thinking. Not that I want
right,
to specifically not give the fans what they want, but I think that when you start to feel, oh, this has become bigger than the thing that I was originally creating. Now let me see where people want me to take it, and what and their feelings on who the favorite character is, and that, and then give that character more screen time. It's like let me hear what the fans' opinions are, and then I'll adjust what I'm making for them. I think that is what results in everything reaching the same conclusion, right?
yeah,
Every anime or every comic book movie or every, right, it's always like, and then we're all fighting and it looks like we're going to lose, but then we all work together and then it defeats right, because it's like you're listening to everyone. It's like, oh, they don't want that character to lose, they don't want that character to lose, they want that guy to lose. Oh, but when that guy is finally beaten, they hope that that character also helps, and then there's also fans of that character, so I'm going to make sure that that character also helps. And like it doesn't that, I constantly mention Quentin Tarantino, and Arthel has mentioned like, oh, Quentin Tarantino is your favorite director, Henry. I don't really know if that's 100% true. I really like Quentin Tarantino, but the one thing he does is he doesn't like, I don't really know where he's going with it, but I do know this: he doesn't care what I want to have happen. He's just going to show his scene, right, the way he wants it to have happen, and I appreciate that. He might be building up all these characters. What was the movie? Inglorious Bastards. Like he's building up all these characters, and then in 5 seconds, when everyone whips out their gun, like the whole cast is dead. Right? It's at one point in the
yeah,
movie, and it's just like, what the heck just happened? This is craziness. Uh, but I appreciate that, because it's like, you know what? He didn't care where I started to want it to go. He's like, this is what's gonna happen, and I actually hope that all the creators of my favorite things do that. So like Berserk is like my favorite manga, like one of the best stories like being written. That guy having a bad schedule and not releasing chapters regularly is a conversation in and of itself. But in terms of when he does release it and when he does move forward, I hope he does whatever he wants with the story and what he always intended to do with the story. I hope he doesn't look at the fan uh emails and the forums about what characters people like the best and hope live to the end. If he wanted to kill a character and was always planning on doing that, I hope he just does it. If he wants to have a good guy become a bad guy, that'll upset a lot of people, but that was always his plan, I hope he does it. I hope he follows through with the plans. And to bring this back, that's my own opinion, but to bring this back to
yeah,
the whole adaptation idea, I kind of feel directors, if they're good, look, there's going to be bad directors who do a terrible job and writers who do a terrible job, and then it's just a bad project, no one likes it. But in the best case scenario, I want the directors and the creators of the new adaptation to also feel the same. For example, if they say, look, in the original source material, in the original book, the whole meaning was this, right? But honestly,
Yeah.
that's not going to be the meaning of this new adaptation. It's going to have a different message at the end, because this is the direction we want to head in for this film. And I think that'll make it the
Yeah.
best film. Then you know what? Do your thing. Fans are going to get angry, but you know what? I don't care. Do your thing, but do it well.
Yeah.
You know, and
It's interesting. I've been watching this thing on YouTube. It's called like What Happens, like that. And they basically like go over like how movies failed or like how they do. And it's not that they're painting a dark light. They're just like they're chronicling the history. And as you watch enough of these episodes, it always comes from the creative person is like, I have a vision. This is what I'm gonna do. And the fans are against it. Some of the producers are against it, but their response is always like, I don't care. And then like ultimately like the game fails and it goes over budget and is bloated. And now my point of that is like not to disagree with things like that. I think I'm not against the auteur saying like I'll do whatever I want, the fans be damned, or but I look at it this way. It's like brain surgery. It's like, okay, the scalpel's in your hands. So if you want to be like a racy comic on stage, or you want to be the auteur, or you want to like have it your way, it's like your vision, your way, and stuff like that, cool. But just know, you've got the scalpel now, and if you nick a nerve or you nick something like that, the patient's dead on the table. And so it is a high risk, high reward statement you're making.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, to really like make sure that metaphor works, though, there does need to be the element of, if they succeed, it's not just a general success. It's like this
Yeah.
person will become Superman, right? Like this person
Right.
will become invincible and live forever. Like it'll be
Yeah.
like if they are successful, they might make a memorable piece of art. Like the source material might have been whatever, but with their vision, like if it works, it might become one of the most famous films of all time. Or you know what I mean? So
Yeah. I'll give an example. Like for example, John McTiernan with Predator. He was one of those people who's like, it's my way. And there's like all
and
kinds
then he
of
made one of
calamities
the
that
most
happen.
the best alien characters ever in the history of
Yeah.
film, right? Predator 1, at least for me, 1 and 2 are just amazing, like and among the coolest character I've ever seen. So yeah, that's a good example. So like
But that director went to prison.
well, that's a whole different, but
Yeah.
listen, but I agree with what you're saying, but I would still just be on the side of you do your thing, risk
Sure.
patient dying for the success, because understand, it's not literally a patient dying. We're talking about a piece of art. So I say take you know what I mean? It's not literally like
Oh no,
someone's
I know exactly what you mean.
so
And
it's
it's
like
yeah.
what might die is this one art project. It might turn out really bad and you were hoping it would turn out
Yeah.
good, but I always would say go for the utter win in place of mediocrity, right? It's like, well, if I don't do this
Yeah.
and I'm safe, it'll be a mediocre thing, but I think everyone will be smiling at the end. If I go for the gold, I may fall flat and then everyone hates it. But if
Yeah.
I'm successful, then it's going to be something that, so
Yeah.
I say skip past mediocrity and go for it. All or nothing. Do that bet every time when it's on art,
Yeah.
is my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's man, it's the Wild West when it comes to these things. Adaptation is definitely like surmises this industry in general, because you have so many egos and so many the fans and all, like there's so much energy and ego and all these things that bring these things to life. And yeah, it's natural that there's going to be conflict. I don't think it's something that will ever really go away. It's really up to us to sort of balance it. But also, to your point, it's also the executives' jobs too, to like, they're like, okay, I'm going to hire Henry Thurlow to direct our next films. This is who this guy is. This is how he is. So if the
Yes,
executives are going to hire
100%
him,
agree.
they
That is
gotta
what
like,
I do. That's a whole
you know,
different topic, and we already have
yeah.
gone too long, so I think we got to wrap this up. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
the
that could be another topic right there.
it could be another topic right there.
Henry
The,
Thurlow.
the big thing that execs do need to do is pick the people very carefully. If this is a
Yeah.
director that doesn't make the kind of stuff that you like, or adapts things in a way and takes risks in ways you don't like, Do not then go with that person, assuming, well, they'll change for my project if I tell them. No, they won't, or they shouldn't. So pick
Yeah.
the people right. I'm sure that there's a proper project for that person. So if your project isn't a proper one for them, don't use them, right?
Yeah.
Is
Final thought.
yeah.
Final thought. What's the most recent great adaptation from manga to anime that you've seen or is coming up?
Oh man.
I already know my pick. You want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Invincible. Um, that is an amazing adaptation. Visually, it like literally looks like the comic book. But to your point, this is a good idea where they were faithful to the comic, but they made changes, that were organic and no one complains about. Like they introduced certain characters or plot lines much earlier in the animation than in the comic books. They race bend certain characters, where they change certain orientations of the characters, but it fits more of the modern day sensibilities because it was written like back in the late 90s or something like that by two like young white dudes that didn't have enough life experience yet. So that was another point we talk about adapting things. People that create these things are much younger and they don't have the life experience. So when it gets to that, but anyways, that's my pick. Invincible, I thought was just a perfect adaptation from the graphic novels.
I still need to watch that, but I will soon. I will soon. Now that
it's your it's up your
I
alley.
will.
It's so violent.
Honestly, I don't have a great answer, probably because I'm not watching as much anime as I used to, but I will say I'm still thoroughly enjoying the One Piece adaptation. So I think that's working decently as an adaptation, and I don't care about the stuff that they order and expand upon. And I'll also throwing Castlevania in there. I mean, because that's taking
Oh yeah,
such a bare bones story and then making it into such like a Game of Thrones level epic story. That's really
yeah,
well done. Yeah. So
yeah. That's a good answer right there. Yeah, Castlevania is amazing.
all right, that's I think this episode probably went long. So anyway, thank you, Stephen. That's it for this episode. Shtaji ga daiji, right?
Shtajio Daiji.
All right, see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.